I have great respect and love for my mum, and without her and her courage, we never, ever would have made it. And I think she taught us very seriously to believe and to trust and to hope. And it would all come good in the end.
You know, life was very, very easy for me till I met him. I'm Dawn Shuttleworth. I was Morby, of a Chichester family. I had parents, obviously, and a brother, and I was the only girl in the family, so I think I might have been spoiled. And life was okay.
My name is Jules Shuttleworth. Jules is from my mother, was a twin, and her sister married a Frenchman. He contracted cancer just before he died. He asked that should another boy be born into the family, could they be named Jules? And so here I am. I was born in Malaya in 1937. Part of my life was spent there growing up. The war intervened, took me away. I returned, and during the emergency troubles, I was there and experienced the problems associated with that, and then returned to the United Kingdom, where I ended up going into the RAF to do my national service. We're living in a place called Taiping in the state of Perak in Malaya. And my father came home, and we knew, obviously, the Japanese had invaded and were moving down through the peninsula of Malaya. And my father said, well, we've been told we have to move. We have to go further south to another one of the prisons and stay there. So just pack a case with some overnight clothes and bits and pieces, and we'll go. When we got to Singapore, the situation deteriorated quite rapidly. And my father again came home one lunchtime, said to my mum, okay, I think you've got to go. So just pack as little as possible, and we'll go down to the quay to see what's happening with the ships and how we get, how we move you on. And he then took us down to the quay, and there were queues of women and children waiting to board boats. So we were ushered onto it. We were deck cargo, and we stayed there until we reached India. My father returned to the prison, and my father was responsible for the hanging of many of these people that passed through the prison who were alleged to be there to be hung through terrorist activities. Many of them, it was never ever proven, but they were hanged. The ship had been bombed coming into Singapore with reinforcements, and the bomb had gone straight through without exploding. Another one had gone down to the engine room and caused damage to the engines. They couldn't tell you where to shelter because there was just no given space. You were there. And so therefore, as a child, the sense of panic did exist. An attack would have been 20 minutes, 25 minutes, but there were 25 memorable minutes. There are instances that I do remember certain situations. I have quite vivid memories of Japanese aircraft coming in, and they were coming low, and I can remember seeing on the sides of their bodies the big red, their sign, the big rising sun, which was painted on the side of the body. And then suddenly there was always someone to grab hold of you and pull you in when the machine gun started. So yes, these things have registered, and I still sometimes think about them.
There were certain things that really stick in my mind. And I can remember a German plane, which I'm pretty sure it was a German plane, and it came across by Chichester Cathedral, didn't touch it, and it came low over our gardens. And I can remember seeing this pilot's face. And even today, if I was a much better artist, I reckon I could draw it. And the plane was on fire.
In order to get back to the United Kingdom, we were first in India, and we were put into a camp, very similar to what you see on television today with the immigrants. And from there, after about 2 months, the authorities came to the mothers and women and said, look, there are some ships we're going to sail. Some are going to Australia, some to New Zealand, some to South Africa. And if you go on the one to South Africa, you may well be able to get a boat back to England if you take your chances. My mother elected to take the ship that went to South Africa. And we got to South Africa, but we were not allowed off the boat because we had got serious cases of smallpox, and therefore the ship was held in quarantine. We weren't allowed to land, so we stayed on the ship then for about 2 or 3 weeks. We arrived in Glasgow, and after we'd been in Glasgow, and the Red Cross had come and kitted us out with clothes because we hadn't got any clothes, everything had been lost. And my mother decided to make her way to Devon, and she eventually found a little cottage right in the middle of Dartmoor called Piswell. 3 of us went to the local school, which was in Princetown, so we were in the shadows of the famous prison, or infamous prison, and we stayed there until the end of the war.
Well, my life was so different from Jules, and much simpler. I lived in Chichester. We are the same age, and I lived in my parents' house, obviously, which they owned, and my father went off to war. He joined the army, and luckily enough, he didn't go abroad, but his job was to look after the German prisoner of wars. My feeling about how we met is it was just meant to be. There's no question about it.
Our first home where we lived together was in fact in Malaya. Dawn was pregnant, so she was left here to have the baby and make sure everything was all okay. And then she flew out and met me.
Len never talks about his war. The army sent him out to Singapore to languish in the camps of evil flame, abused, oppressed, near death, till his rescue came. Reluctant members of the PBI, Stan trudged and dug and saw his comrades die. His war, a basic struggle to survive. So many fell, but Stan is still alive.